Okay, so in this video I'm going to be showing you how to do your mind map for nightmares for photography. So start with nightmares in the middle, but then you're going to need to think of lots of ideas around this. So for example, you might think of creatures, or maybe something else first, maybe kind of creepy figures of some sort. Be more general with these first terms, and then we're going to branch out from this and keep coming up with more and more ideas. So that's just one area of nightmares. You might also have nightmares and think of dreams. And you might talk about, from that you might have reality versus surreal. Surreal is kind of what appears to be real but isn't. Creepy figures. So this, you could have, I don't know, things like ghosts and ghouls. Can't remember how to spell that now. Ghouls. What else could you have? Creepy figures. You might have, actual people that give you nightmares. From people, we might have distortion. So you might have like normal people that maybe you know, but they're distorted in a dream-like kind of state or something. So distortion. From there you might get more practical ideas. So at the start we're not particularly thinking of photography as such. We're just thinking about this topic, nightmares, and we're coming up with a mind map with whatever things, anything that you associate with nightmares. So what that might even be, like fears, and branch off from that. Spiders, and then you might get more ideas from this. So the further you get out, then you're thinking of actual maybe photographic responses that you might want to do. So distortion, and I've got a video on moodboard for you here, so I do also show you things like distortion and how visually you would represent that. So sometimes it's a good idea to get a bit of a visual idea, but do this first, and then when you get stuck and you have a look at your moodboard, go on Pinterest and have a look at some images, then it might give you more ideas to branch out from here. So distortion, you could think about how could you distort a photo. You could use like warping apps, so you can like warp and stretch something. Maybe there's even something like, I don't know, something on Snapchat or Instagram or something, like these filters and things where we've got just like warped distortions. What else? What other ways could you distort? You could scrunch up photos, scrunch and fold maybe photos, scrunch and fold them. How else could you distort them? You could scratch into photos and different ideas like that. So again, from this ghosts and ghouls idea, we could go further up, and then what could we come up with from here? So ghosts and ghouls, I think realistically you would have to photograph. These are going to have to be things you have to photograph. So, if you're going to put something like dragons, are you actually going to be able to photograph a dragon? No. How would you represent that in some way? Would it just be, it doesn't mean don't put dragons on here. Like maybe dragon is a fear, for example. It's still an idea. But how might you represent that? Fire you probably could take a picture of. That's a bit more realistic. So, and you might not always be able to just magically take a picture of a spider. Maybe you have a pet spider that you want to include or something. Or, you can't always kind of expect to have a spider just at hand, like immediately when you need one. So, do you actually make something, maybe like a sculpture? And there are some artists, I think I've included one in the moodboard video. There's one on there for spider sculpture. So from ghosts and ghouls, what might you have? You might put things, sorry, my camera just cut off there. So you might think of ghosts with sheets or something like that, but maybe that's a little bit samey. How else could you recreate ghosts? Could they be sort of blurred blurred figures, kind of like shadows. What else could they be? Ghosts and ghouls. I don't know if there are any kind of like sculptures or something you might take pictures of or maybe make. So dreams, reality versus surreal. How could you create maybe more of a dream-like feel? Could you have sort of different filters? Sort of maybe a made-up set. Maybe a made-up set or scene where you actually create a completely different environment. Filters, layers. Maybe you could layer things up to make them look dream-like, to represent a dream rather than just being just a straightforward photo. Or maybe you go with this reality idea and put like real nightmares, like what is like a living nightmare, living or real nightmares. They might be personal things to you. So you could have a few different ideas off of that. And of course, lots more ideas here that you think are originally from nightmares. You could even just try Googling the word nightmares and just see if anything pops up as well, if you're really stuck for ideas. But that's quite a few to start with. And of course, you could still come off of here more with creepy figures. You could still come off more with other things over here. Scratching into surface. I don't know, that could remind you of like a cat or something, and that's associated with kind of witches and things. So it's really just branching off and stemming off from these things. You might also get more kind of visual ideas of how you want things to look. So maybe dark, night or something like that. And you might look at like night photography. That's made me think of woods randomly, like a dark woods and things like that. So there's no right, you can't write down something and be wrong about it. So just write as many ideas as you have. Don't worry if they don't necessarily fit together. It doesn't have to make sense to everyone, but it's just showing the examiner that you are really thinking outside the box and you're not just going to come up with typical things. And I want you to actually think of your own things, not just like the kind of generic stuff that I've got here. I want you to really branch off and have your own individual style that you're going to go for.